My name is Mark Harrington. I'm 52 years old, a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army, and for nearly 3 decades I served as a senior engineer in our tactical development unit. I've led teams in Iraq, Afghanistan, and bases most Americans don't even know exist, but nothing, not firefights, not explosions, not years of bureaucracy, prepared me for that room. They called it a review, but it felt like an execution. I was seated dead center, third chair from the front, uniform sharp, boots polished, chest full of ribbons I never asked for. The moment the projector flicked on, I knew something was wrong. White screen, bold black font. A single phrase underlined at the top. Phase out legacy systems, staff redundancy. Then came my name, full rank and all, right under it. I've seen IEDs detonate from 20 feet away and didn't flinch. But that made my ears ring. Colonel Dorsey didn't even look up when he read the next slide. He just said it like it was a supply list. Lieutenant Colonel Mark Harrington, legacy designation, engineering position obsolete. My jaw didn't move, but something cracked in my chest. I scanned the room. Captain Blake, my protege, the one I'd mentored from cadet school, suddenly found the table really interesting. Major Wren kept her hands folded and eyes down like she was in prayer. Not a single glance, not a nod, not even the dignity of discomfort. They weren't just letting me go. They were erasing me. And the worst part, no one seemed surprised. I'd led operations that saved lives, designed mobile bridge systems still used in conflict zones today, taught half those officers how to field test prototypes. Now I was being reduced to a slide and a sentence. It didn't even come from the secretary. It came from a civilian advisor. Elliot Crane, 33, Harvard MBA, navy blazer over jeans, no military background. He stepped up to the podium with the confidence of someone who thought simulation experience counted as combat. His exact words: "We need to modernize our force posture. Legacy protocols and personnel are inefficient." He didn't even say my name. I clenched my fists under the table, felt my pulse jump in my neck. This wasn't a debate. This was a decision already made. He kept going, words like scalability and automation leaking out of his mouth like oil from a cracked valve. There were no questions, no commendation, no thanks. Just silence. A thick, suffocating silence that screamed, "Don't make a scene." I stood up when they dismissed us, slow and stiff. I didn't salute. I didn't speak. I just walked out past faces I once trusted, people I once bled for, and felt like a ghost in my own uniform. Outside, the air was sharp. I kept walking, past the motor pool, the drone hangar, the field testing range. My name was still on the door of Lab C, but I didn't open it. I knew what I'd find. A clear desk, locked systems, no warning, no goodbye. I guess I wasn't just being pushed aside. I was being erased. And somehow, that hurt more than any wound I'd ever carried. I walked back into the tech compound that afternoon, half expecting someone to stop me at the gate. No one did. The guard barely looked up from his tablet, like I was just another old officer wandering through. The corridor lights flickered like always, but something felt colder. I passed Lab B, the drone bay, the 3D prototyping rooms. Doors I used to walk through without knocking now stayed shut like I didn't have the clearance anymore. When I reached Lab C, I knew before I touched the door. The handle was warm, but the air inside was empty. My nameplate was gone, just a clean strip of metal where it used to be, as if they'd scrubbed not just my name, but the memory of it. The desk I'd used for 18 years was still there, but stripped bare. No photos, no coffee mug, no notepad with grease smudges from my fingers. The drawers were open, emptied. My old field manuals, my blueprints, even the custom caliper set my father gave me. Gone. A stranger sat in my chair. Early 30s, buzz cut, crisp uniform, not a speck of dirt on his boots. He didn't look up, just kept typing, fingers tapping out some protocol he probably hadn't even written. I waited. Nothing. No glance, no acknowledgement, not even a nod. A few of my former team members walked by. Johnson, Alvarez, people I'd once pulled from burnout and bad missions. They didn't meet my eye. Pretended they were deep in some new schematic or test order. One even turned a corner too fast, like he'd seen a ghost. I didn't speak. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of watching me explain myself. I just stood there, the hum of the servers behind me, the faint smell of solder and dust clinging to everything, and felt the hollow space where respect used to live. Even the workbench in the corner, my bench, was spotless. The scratch on the side from a stress test, gone wrong, gone. The black burn mark from a misfired solder, run, gone. Like the lab had been reset for someone else. Like I'd never been there at all. I turned away slow, my boots echoing on the tile. I didn't know where to go. My badge still worked, but I had no destination. I walked the halls like a man visiting a house that used to be his but now belonged to someone else. There were no words spoken, no orders given. But the message was loud. I wasn't needed. I wasn't wanted. I wasn't part of the system anymore. And somehow, the silence said it better than 1,000 memos ever could. That night, I sat at the old drafting table in my garage, the one with the crooked leg and the oil ring from a coffee mug I broke 10 years ago. The house was quiet, just the ticking of the kitchen clock and the soft whir of the ceiling fan. I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out the file I'd kept hidden for almost a decade. Falcon Watch. That was the name on the top of the folder. I came up with it during a deployment in Kandahar when I saw 3 recon units fail because the terrain outsmarted our gear. It was a modular drone interface system, something that could adapt to elevation, weather, and unpredictable signal drops in real time. They shelved it back in 2013. Too expensive, too ambitious, not aligned with the current roadmap. That's what they told me, but I never let it go. Every few months, I'd update a diagram, tweak the calibration specs, refine the algorithm by hand. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because I believed it could save lives, because I knew what it felt like to be in the field with faulty tools and no backup. And I knew Falcon Watch could change that. I sat there for a long time, just flipping through the pages. The ink had faded in spots. Some notes were smeared where my thumb had pressed too hard. But the system still made sense. Better than most of the stuff they were pushing now. I scanned the files into a single PDF. No cover letter, no name on the first page. Just clean schematics, annotated models, and the final field integration report. I logged into the submission portal, found the secured defense channel, and uploaded it to the Pentagon's R&D queue. I didn't check the box asking for follow-up, didn't sign the optional author declaration. I just hit send. Then I shut the laptop, leaned back, and let the silence return. I wasn't looking for revenge. I wasn't trying to prove anyone wrong. I just wanted what I built to outlive me. If someone down the line opened that file and found something useful in it, that would be enough. I sat there until the garage got cold. My fingers traced the edge of the folder, still on the desk. I didn't need them to remember my name. I just didn't want them to forget the work. Sector 9 went dark at 03:42 hours. The main drone feed cut to static, then rebooted into a 5-minute delay loop before failing completely. At first, Command thought it was a local jam, maybe a weather glitch or terrain interference. But then the thermal maps came in misaligned, pointing at empty ground, while the patrol was already moving in. The warning alerts fired late. By the time the team realized what was happening, they were 20 feet from a minefield that hadn't been on the updated grid. One soldier tripped and fell, and it was pure luck the trigger sensor didn't engage. Backup visuals came in scrambled. One drone collided with a tower base, and the rest were recalled manually. The young systems officer, Barnes, looked frozen at his terminal. He kept rerouting commands like the problem was software lag, but the interface wouldn't respond. The colonel on duty barked orders, his voice cracking over the intercom. They had no clear eyes, no real-time footage, and 25 soldiers in the dark. The silence after the abort command was the loudest thing all night. The mission was scrubbed, the unit pulled back, and 2 hours later, a review board was already forming. This was supposed to be the most advanced field interface the department had ever deployed. It had passed every simulation. But out there, in real terrain, it broke in the worst way. By morning, analysts were combing through archive designs, anything that could have predicted the fault. One senior engineer opened a file marked Falcon Watch Legacy Submission. No metadata, no attached name, just specs, calibration logic, and a handwritten note in the margins. Failsafe priority, terrain override, not command signal. Someone flagged it for immediate review. Someone else ran a side-by-side diagnostic. The system in the field had none of the terrain-first logic built in. Falcon Watch did. It would have caught the signal drift. It would have recalibrated using ground heat and airflow instead of relying on unstable uplinks. For the first time in a decade, a design tagged obsolete was being called essential. And somewhere deep inside the Pentagon's secure servers, a forgotten file was blinking again. The call came just after noon. I was in the garage, adjusting the rear suspension on my old Jeep, sleeves rolled up, hands black with grease. The phone vibrated once on the workbench, screen flashing a number I didn't recognize but already knew. A calm voice introduced herself as a senior liaison from the Department of Defense. They were assembling a rapid advisory unit to address the Sector 9 incident. She said my system had been reviewed, tested overnight, and that the board wanted me on board, effective immediately. I wiped my hands on a rag but didn't answer right away. There was no rush, no heat in my chest, just that quiet recognition, the kind that doesn't shout but sits steady in the bones. I said yes, not because I needed to prove anything, but because they finally saw it for what it was, the work, the years, the part of me I'd poured into every line of that design. It was never about proving them wrong. After the call, I didn't call anyone. I didn't celebrate. I just sat for a while, elbow resting on the frame, eyes on the driveway. The wind shifted and the scent of warm metal and cut grass filled the air. I hadn't won anything, but I hadn't been erased either, and that was enough. I walked through the main gate just after sunrise. Same gravel crunch under my boots, same wind cutting through the open lot. But it didn't feel like before. This time, there was no rank on my shoulder, no orders in my hand. Some of the younger officers glanced up, confused. A few nodded, unsure if they should salute. The man who had replaced me was already gone, reassigned quietly after the Sector 9 review. No ceremony, no explanation. I didn't ask where he went. I didn't need to. I wasn't here to settle scores. I was here to finish something. Falcon Watch 2.0 wasn't about me. It was about getting it right, this time with no compromises. Inside the lab, my old schematics were pinned to the wall again. The tech crew stood around like they were waiting for someone to tell them it was okay to speak. I just stepped to the board and started pointing. Wiring updates, real-time heat map overlays, backup failover toggles. Within an hour, we were working like we used to. No meetings, no titles, just minds and hands focused on the thing that mattered. One of the junior analysts pulled me aside, asked if it felt strange being back. I told him the truth. I didn't come back to feel anything. I came back to finish the work. And if we did it right, the next team out there wouldn't even know my name. Just that, when they needed it most, the system didn't fail. That's all I ever wanted. It was late, the kind of late when the halls go quiet and the vending machines hum a little louder. I was still at my desk, calibrating the sensor lag on Falcon Watch 2.0, when I heard a knock on the frame. I looked up and saw Captain Ethan Ward, clean cut, eyes steady, but carrying something in his stance that told me this wasn't just a check-in. He pulled up a chair without asking and sat like he used to in the training bay, back when I was teaching him how to read terrain without screens. He said he was the one who pushed Falcon Watch back onto the review list, said he remembered how I drilled him on ground logic when others were still memorizing drone specs. For a moment, we sat in silence, the kind only two people with shared history can hold without it feeling empty. He said he never forgot what I taught him, that machines could help, but instincts saved lives. He said he saw the system fail in Sector 9 and knew exactly what would have stopped it. I nodded, but it didn't feel like pride. It felt like something deeper, like watching a tree grow where you once dropped a seed without knowing if it would take. He told me the engineers listened because he spoke with my words. That's when I realized it. My legacy wasn't in the metal or the software. It was in the people I'd trained, the hands I'd steadied, the voices I'd shaped. They didn't just carry my methods. They carried the reason behind them, and that would outlast any system I ever built. The offer came across a polished table in a quiet room at the Pentagon. Director of Technical Operations for all UAV Special Forces divisions, full authority over procurement, oversight, and development cycles. They even said I could name my own salary. I listened, let them finish. Then I shook my head. I wasn't built for offices or politics, not anymore. I told them I had a different plan. I laid out the blueprint for something smaller, leaner, a specialized outfit, separate from the chain of command where field-tested engineers could build without bureaucracy. I called it Forge Unit, Only the best would make it in, no resumes, just grit, history, and proof they'd gotten their hands dirty under pressure. No whiteboards, just real work forged under fire. I told them Forge wouldn't fix what was broken. It would replace it. Not in size, but in soul. A lab, a proving ground, a legacy rolled into function. They hesitated. I didn't. I made it clear. If they wanted results, they had to let go of comfort. Progress doesn't always come from the top. Sometimes it starts in the ashes. They agreed in the end, reluctantly. But I saw it in their faces. They knew this was the only way forward. Not because I was right, but because they'd finally run out of ways to be wrong. I walked out of that room with no badge, no title, no committee. Just a green light. And that was all I needed. The hum of the Forge unit wasn't like any bass I'd known. It wasn't loud. It was focused. Every clang of metal, every flicker of code on a screen, every pair of hands at work told me we were building something that would last. I watched them through the glass, Jensen fine-tuning a stabilizer mount, Diaz running flight simulations with a focus I hadn't seen in years. No one rushed, no one bragged. They just worked, like it mattered. And it did. Because what we built wasn't just drones or systems. We built belief in process, in people. In the kind of legacy you don't log in a file. Somewhere in a server, my personnel files probably marked inactive or erased altogether. My name, my rank, years of service, just data, deleted with a keystroke. But every weld these kids lay, every override they program, carries something they got from me, from what I refuse to let die. You can delete my file, but not my legacy. I thought back to the day they called me obsolete. I remember the silence in the room, the way no one looked up, and I remember walking out without a word, because I knew better than to fight in rooms where no one listens. Now, the room listens, and it's filled with people who know what it means to earn their place, to fail, to fix, to try again. There's no rank here, only respect. I sat down near the back, same way I used to when I started. Watch them build. Watch them carry forward the kind of work that doesn't get medals, but keeps people alive. My hands are slower now, but my heart's steadier than ever. If you were in my boots, would you have walked away or walked back in? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story.